Hello and welcome to Moving Conversations. I'm your host, James Kern. We are powered by Kern here with Delicate Moving and Moving Conversations. Before we get started today, let me tell you a little bit about our sponsor here, Delicate Moving. At Delicate Moving, they provide outstanding moving and packing services to thousands of customers in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. For over 25 years, people have been able to count on Delicate Moving for their moving needs. They only hire fully trained professional movers, no day labor, no temporary help. They've got almost a 5-star rating with Google, Home Advisor, Angie's List. They're A-rated with Angie's List. They're best of the best with Home Advisor. 65% of our business at Delicate Moving comes from referral and repeat business. If you're in need of a move, can't impress upon you how much you'll be impressed by Delicate Moving. All right. Well, we got the paying the bills out of the line. How you doing today, Lyndon? Are you with me, Lyndon?
Can you hear me, James?
I can hear you.
James, can you? Okay. You can hear me now?
Yeah, we're having some technical difficulties, I guess, huh?
Can you hear me, James?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
right.
Great. Sorry about that rough intro there, guys. That's my fault. But I think Darren and April are trying to join us, but they keep trying to reach out to me. So I don't know if in the back end there you can try and bring them on there, Lyndon.
They are not in yet. They are not in yet.
Yeah, they keep calling my phone, trying to reach me, so I'm not sure. But anyway, we'll just have to go on with that, and hopefully they can join us here shortly. What do you got going on today, Lyndon?
Just this, doing the shows, man. Doing the shows, meeting a lot of new small business owners that are interested in doing shows, interested in being contributors, being a part of the difference, and tapping into that audience that we figured out that over the last 13 months was over 500,000 people have tuned into the difference at some point in time and paid attention to Moving Conversations. I mean, it's a tribute really to the people that we have and the shows that you guys are creating.
Right.
And just the collective of everyone that's involved with the difference. Their audiences, their crowds, their spheres. We created a lot of buzz and a lot of interest, and so a lot more businesses are inquiring now about it, and we're excited about that and hope to continue to grow.
How many shows are you up to with the difference?
We're up to 12 shows a week right now.
12. Wow. What a, and that's in a short time.
Well, yeah, because this time last year we were doing what was called The Difference, which was my show, and that was one show a week. When COVID happened and some things had to change, you guys stepped up, and with no experience, all of us are amateurs and we're getting better every day, but you guys stepped up and created your own show. And we have Darren and April coming in now. I'm going to go ahead and put them in. I'm not sure their camera's ready, but we're gonna pop them up there for you.
Do we have like a penalty box? I know Darren can relate to a penalty box from hockey. Do you think we could designate an area for him and not? I don't want to throw April into that because
no, April doesn't deserve that. But here I know that Darren loves to see his name scrolling.
He does.
So I'm just going to take that out for about 2 minutes, Even
if it's negative,
in hockey, you're in the penalty box. And April, I kept declining your call because I'm using my phone today for the show. And I figured, April, you would go, I bet he's using his phone. That's why he's not answering.
Yeah, I did. I worked all that out.
Yeah, I did.
If I was on a computer, I would have just picked up my phone live and gone, "Hey, April, where are you at? We're looking for you on the show."
We pieced it all together. We realized that.
I tell you, it's probably, is it daily that Darren is reminded of how valuable his marriage?
I don't know. Ask him. Are you reminded daily, Darren?
Of what was that?
Your need for me.
Yeah. I'm also reminded every Tuesday of the need for a link.
It was in the calendar invite. I don't want to get all messy here, but it was in the calendar link. and you just have to click
I
on it.
These are battling.
I don't have a calendar invite. I guess this
We're
is
here. That's what matters.
yeah. We need to have a production meeting where we can figure out why you can't use the same link every week.
I
and we
feel
don't have
there's
to
a lot of
change them.
shame going.
There
Yeah.
seems like there's
Guilt and shame.
Well, we're trying to see
Unfortunately, I wish we could use the same link every week. It would save me a lot of time, but the software creates a new one for every show.
Yep.
why don't y'all send that to your bosses as a problem, Darren and April, with that big company y'all work for? Maybe they can fix that and they can buy that company.
Whoa. Y'all have Larry by Zoom. Just fix
Yeah,
it,
there
Larry.
we go. Perfect.
all right. Well,
Cool. How are y'all
we're
doing?
here. So thanks for vamping or whatever you guys did.
Yeah, we were just trying to talk about, we were promoting the difference and telling all the business owners out there or people that have something to say that they should contact Lyndon and figure out a way to get their own show going. And,
Okay.
so anyway, all right, good to have you with us, April. I've missed you the past couple of weeks.
I know.
You have been just busy, busy, busy.
I have been running everywhere.
I know. Well, between work and two wonderful daughters and all the things that you do, I mean, I'm not
Getting it
surprised.
Getting it done. It's
Yeah.
fun. I enjoy this time, so I'm glad to be back.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking time out for this high-paying gig that we have here.
Oh, show.
So
I've been meaning to talk to someone about that. I got to tell you, it really is less pay than I thought it was going to be.
but it's more than you get for that Sunday gig you have.
Well,
That's
that's
right.
well, they're very similar contracts, which tells me I need a new
You
rep.
need an agent.
I need a new agent.
They are week to week. I'm glad you pointed that out. At least that's what Phil Salee told me. But anyway, we'll move on. So yeah, you hinted there that there's some guilt and shame going on here, and that is our topic today that we'll jump right into. We have been discussing shame for the last couple of weeks in our Bible study group that we're all in. And I thought, and Darren thought, and April was like, man, this would be a great topic to take to the masses because all of us have experienced it. And unfortunately, I could probably speak for most everyone, we have experienced the impairments of shame and guilt. And we probably need to understand the giftedness of it. And so I think that's what we should dive in today. We'll talk about shame today and go from there.
Yeah, James, it's like I told the class. I mean, I think shame and guilt can be the most powerful, two of the most powerful feelings that we have as we navigate through relationships and that kind of stuff. I think it can also be the most detrimental if we don't know how to use them correctly. And especially inside of marriages, man, I mean, these things not doing it right can tear up I would say it this way, maybe the closer the relationship, the more detrimental doing this wrong can actually be. It's super, super important to get them right. They are very connected, and we're just not really taught how to deal with them well. And we always talk about it in relationship to marriages, but honestly, this plays into relationships, especially between you and your parents and the ways you were raised, you and your kids, the way you're raising your kids. I mean, it's a pretty broad topic. And since they're connected, you and I, we thought, talking about them kind of in the order of the way we experience them, shame and then guilt might be helpful. And I think shame's the harder one because something we did Sunday and April wasn't there because she was goofing off.
That's very shameful.
I'm glad your daughter would be glad to hear that she was goofing off. If that's
Well, she wasn't goofing off.
I feel very shamed and I feel guilty.
Well, there's
Hey,
yeah.
we're-
I mean,
So
so you weren't there,
I was not there.
but you weren't there because we actually were getting to watch our daughter Sunday dance in the Nutcracker, and she's been working.
Dance mom.
She was working like
She
crazy.
was a principal part in that, right?
Yes, she was.
Wow.
She worked really hard.
Yeah, I don't know.
Darren doesn't know what that means, but yes, she was.
I think so.
For all of you people who know, she was. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
whatever.
Anyway, so it was, the whole production was much better than it was last year. I mean, they really, the whole group did a lot of work. It was exceptional. But anyway, they had the first show at 10 a.m. and it was on the other side of the Metroplex. So April had to get over there, toot sweet.
So I wasn't there, but
on Sunday. But here's one of the questions I asked people, because we're further ahead than this show is, where we were talking about guilt. And I asked the group, and I'll pose it to you in April, James. So let's just say that I plopped down from another planet. No jokes. But we don't have feelings. We don't know what they feel like. And we're in a conversation and we're talking about shame, and we're talking about the feelings, and we get to shame. And if I said to you, okay, I don't know what that means. You said it's a feeling. Okay. So what does shame feel like? What would you guys say?
Go ahead, April.
Well, I would think of the word like hiding.
It feels like you're hiding.
Yeah. Shame makes me want to hide.
Mr. Alien, do you know what hiding means, Mr. Alien?
I do know what hiding means.
Sure.
And because I have a high command of the English language,
Except
by the way.
for that word.
I just don't know how to feel it. So it makes you hide, but that doesn't tell me how it quote unquote feels. How would you? And the reason that I want to ask you guys this is because for me, I think shame is the hardest one to describe, because if think about like disappointment, I think I know what disappointment feels like. Mm-hmm. Sadness. I mean, no matter how numb I have trained myself to become, I probably could figure out what sadness feels like. Glad.
I think if I could come up with 4 words to wrap them all together, I might say, and I like the hiding thing, but I think I would say I would wrap up embarrassed, less than, insecure, and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those kind of 4 could play into shame.
Right, say them again.
Vulnerable.
You said embarrassed.
Vulnerable, embarrassed, insecure, and less than about myself. Feeling less than. Sure. I feel bad. I feel awful.
I think there's also like the word that I think about is like I'm being seen. So
exposed,
vulnerable. It's more of like there's a self. There's an element to me that I don't put out in front of everybody, and shame exposes that, which I'm keeping hidden. That's why I kind of tie that to. And so what might make you, James, feel vulnerable might not make me feel vulnerable or seen, or whatever. So whatever that looked like for that particular person, I think that's why it's so hard to really put your finger on it, because it's so prescriptive to each person. But I think it's something about being seen as needy. I'm being seen as needy. And if I'm not comfortable with that in that particular subject or that particular area, then I think that's what shame is. Like I feel bad about that particular part of me, so I hide it, and then something happens and someone sees that. And so,
so it's almost like so from a physical standpoint, for some people, you don't want to have you don't want your clothes to blow off of you when you're you don't want to come out of the swimming pool with your shorts have fallen off at the local pool.
You feel very exposed and vulnerable.
You feel exposed because your clothes have provided cover, and now you've been exposed, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
You're ashamed. You feel you have shame.
Yeah, it makes me think about.
Is there a difference? Is there a difference in shame and embarrassment?
Yes.
Because it would be embarrassing for your shorts to fall down at the pool. Shame would be more of an inadequacy based on different things, would it not?
Yeah, I think the example I was thinking of, which may help to kind of circle back with that, one of my daughters was born with, it's called a hemangioma, but it's basically a blood vessel that is on the outside, right underneath the skin, rather than inside of your body. And over time, it happens to a lot of preemies. Sometimes people will have it on their face. It's like a big red looking like growth. Sometimes it'll be on their face. One of my daughters has one on her back, and when she was born with it, it just looked like a little red like dot or something. And then over time, as she grew, it grew. It's about the size of a quarter. And when she was really little, we called it an angel kiss. She knew that it was there. It was red, and we always would say, "Oh, it looks like an angel kissed you," And so she always called her angel kiss. Well, then when she got to be about 4 or 5 years old, we would always buy swimming suits that would cover it because on her back. And then one year we had a suit and it didn't cover it. And a couple of little girls came up to her and said, "What is that? I need to know what that is. What is that? That's not something." So to me, shame is being seen with something that you've been trying to hide, which I think is different than embarrassment. That's probably a different feeling.
Well, I think there is, I would say embarrassment is a subcategory to shame. That shame in and of itself. But the reason I asked, I wanted to kind of chat on.
You could be embarrassed, and real quick, you could be embarrassed if somebody sings "Happy Birthday" to you in front of a big crowd at the restaurant, like they do. But you're not going to feel shame in that.
Right.
No.
So that's why I think embarrassment is
embarrassment.
That's right. That's right. I think you can have embarrassment without shame, but you probably have, when you have shame, you have embarrassment.
That's why shame, and that's why I said you feel less than, you feel inadequate, you feel like something's wrong, or you've been exposed to something's wrong with you. So that's why I said.
Well, and guys, think about how our culture use shame, right? How do we even, when you hear that word, how is it used? Because we don't talk about it, but it's like, oh my gosh, you did what? Oh, shame on you. Shame on you. Or
you should be ashamed of yourself.
You should be ashamed of yourself. Or
have you no shame?
Have you no shame?
You're just out there living it.
Lyndon, have you no shame? Right. So always looking for ways to bring Lyndon into the show. But
sometimes I do.
Sometimes you do. Well, but I'm just saying it's kind of used like that. And I think we know it's bad. And I think we know it's alienating. It's an alienating kind of, I'm trying to think of the word here, but like when you get labeled that, or it's projected at you, it's very alienated. It's like when have you no shame on you. It's like you're getting sent outside of the camp, right? And so because of that, we I don't know what it feels like per se. It is, I guess, embarrassment's a little bit of a describer, but at the end of the day, I don't want anything to do with it, right? It's bad. And one of the things that we emphasize every week, even though I didn't do it this week, is that embarrass or that all the gifts are good. These are all gifts, and they're all very, very good. So how can shame be good? I think that's where we as we continue the conversation, that's where we want to go. Is this a good time for a break, James?
No, it looks like you walked away for a second. I don't know if you had a bathroom break or what.
Trying to figure. No, easy there, guys. Well,
there you are.
Okay, sorry about that. No, we're having some audio difficulties, and I was trying to go backstage here and figure out why we have such choppiness on the line here. The audio is real choppy coming back at me, so I didn't know. No, it's not time for a break. But I think what you're saying is going into shame is true. And I think most of us, well, I'll say for me, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I can speak more to how shame has impaired me, been an impairment more than a gift. And I think that's where we want to go with the show is talking about the impairments versus the gifts of shame, and what the healthy shame looks like versus toxic shame and contempt.
Yeah, I just want to say before we go into all the gifts, because I think that's really important, is that shame has to do with our ego and how well you're willing to kind of pocket your ego and say, yeah, I am needy, and it goes back. I mean, Darren and I have said this many times. It goes back to the original sin of, hey, where are you guys? We're hiding. Oh, why are you hiding? We're naked. Oh, who told you were naked? Like, right? So the whole point there is, we did something, and instead of showing our need for you and coming to you and saying, hey, I did this and it was wrong, and standing in the need, we decided to go hide and avoid our limitedness. And the more you do that, the more thin of a layer that ego becomes, the more thin and eggshell it becomes. And I think when you stand in healthy shame, and you learn to stand in healthy shame with each other, with your spouse, with your children, with friends, family, and with God, really, the stronger that that muscle becomes. And I think that's something that we have to practice, because we are needy. But a lot of us don't like to feel needy, because neediness ties to vulnerability, which goes back to DISC, right? We talked about all that before. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about.
I mean, and just think about
that's great though, April. I like that ego thing, because I can relate to that.
I can too.
And you should have been at class the last couple of times we were talking about this, because Darren didn't bring the ego part up. But anyway, I like that part.
Well, I can only go so far with the people in the class, because of they're just.
He doesn't want to.
Yeah, they can only take very small bites. So
my ego, I feel someone touching my ego a lot of times when I'm ashamed. Like, my ego gets touched.
Right.
That's
what it is.
When you're embarrassed, your ego doesn't get touched necessarily. But yes, I like that. So that gives me a good visual.
And then you can just look at it and go, can I stand in healthy shame?
Yes.
And what does that do to me if I, yeah, I did it. It's not like, well, you know what, Darren, we could tell the story. Anyway, last night I did something when we were shopping that wasn't appropriate, and it embarrassed Darren. And so instead of saying, that wasn't okay, I did that because I wanted to, I made all kinds of other excuses about what happened, or I tried to gaslight him, like that's not what it was, or it's no big deal, or whatever. And so, we do it all the time. Everybody does it all the time. And I think it really takes kind of being focused and in your body and in your mind to be able to say, you know what, that wasn't okay, and I'm really sorry. And because what we're afraid is that someone's going to dogpile.
So wait, are you?
I am really sorry about that. Anyway, so what we're afraid is what's happening right now. He's going to dogpile and go, well, see, that's because, and you did this, and da da da. Instead of that person going, hey, I really appreciate that.
Hey, I really appreciate you saying that publicly. And we're having a moment. We don't need you guys right now.
No, I'm just saying, standing in healthy shame is not something that, our flesh wants to run from that. That's, I think that's tied to the original sin, is that now you know what shame feels like, and we were never really meant to feel that, I don't think.
So James, when you think about, we didn't use the word ego, and it is a great word to use, but the giftedness of shame, of healthy shame, and there is such thing. April keeps saying healthy shame, because there is something called unhealthy shame, which is more likely is more likely referred to toxic shame. Okay, it becomes toxic. It becomes toxic because it'll kill you. It poisons you over time. Okay, but the giftedness of shame, and before really being exposed to all this, if you would ask me, and I'm not going to put Lyndon, I'm not going to put Lyndon on the spot, but if I were to ask, hey, why do you think people have shame? Rightfully so, Lyndon would probably bounce around trying to figure it out, because we're not really taught it. But the giftedness is humbleness, right? So that's where the ego part comes in, is that it's an attack on your ego, and basically what it's doing is it's putting you in your place. Okay, and how we described it in class is that shame is setting up, it is defining for you your limitations, and it's basically saying, okay, you are capable of doing everything that everyone else is capable of. Because there's things like now, James, you just go, well, I'd never do that, right? We would all say that, right? I mean, is there something you would say, I would never do that?
Well, I used to think that, but I don't know if I do anymore. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would never abandon my children. I mean, yeah, there's things that I can think about and go, I would never murder someone. I would never hurt a baby.
Or there might be things we've seen on television on some of those narcissistic shows we've all seen.
Yeah.
Where we go, I would never
do that.
That's what I would be so ashamed if I did that. And I will add, there is that other side. When you hear someone say, have you no shame, or you should be ashamed of yourself, a lot of times that's being said to someone who lacks self-awareness, or they just are so into themselves that they do something that all of us or most of us would probably have shame about. And they're just so arrogant or so oblivious that they do it. And then you go, I can't believe that you did that. Have you no shame?
They need some humility.
So really those, if we understand shame correctly, James, what you're saying is, in most applications, when someone would say, have you no shame, or you should be ashamed of yourself, that's probably a very, very helpful and accurate comment or question.
Except that people abuse it. But I pulled up Genesis 3 when we were talking about standing in healthy shame. So God says, who told you you were naked? Did you eat from the tree I told you not to eat from? And the man said, the woman you gave me.
Hey, can I interrupt real quick, Darren? Are y'all's mics? I'm sorry to bring a production issue on live here, but are y'all's mics activated versus the computers, or vice versa? Because
that's what she was talking. So I was looking at.
I just checked it. It sounds like it's better. Whatever you pressed.
I didn't press anything.
No.
My mic on my computer is muted.
Check my connection there. You know what you were
messing
with.
So you
don't have the deep tone that you normally have when your boom mics are working.
Really?
Okay.
Yep.
Check the thing back there.
Hold on.
Talking. So anyway, it says, so did he stand in healthy shame and in his need when God asked him that?
Right.
No. What did he do? He gaslighted.
Mm-hmm.
He went, well, the woman that you gave me as a companion, she gave me the fruit, and yeah, I ate it, and then he talks about, okay, well, what about you? Is this what you've done? And she was like, well, the serpent is the one who everybody was passing the buck rather than standing in healthy shame and in their need and saying, you're the only ones there in the garden. Why aren't you running to God and saying, I did this and help me get out of it? Like, what do I do? No, we hid. And then when we were confronted with our sin, we either gaslighted, blamed it on somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Right. So this is as old as the hills, in my opinion. And I think that it's at the core of our ego, which is really our flesh. If you start talking psychology and all that kind of stuff, the ego is our flesh.
Right.
Right. And when we feel that, and so God goes, yeah, that's your flesh. Are you going to humble it?
Right.
Or are you going to use the impairment? Are you going to use the gift, which is, whoa, that's my ego there. And I feel that, and I'm aware of that. And so is this healthy shame? And if it is, can I stand in it? Because I am needy and I see my need and I want to exercise and make that, get better at that. Or do I just, do I want to let the ego just overtake me?
Yeah. Well, the conviction that you feel, if you feel convicted, will that keep you in that shame, or will that move you into the gifted side? And I think that's a word that is I feel sometimes when you have shame, you hope that you feel it convicts you of something that moves you, and it creates that humility that we're talking about, because it convicts you and you go, you know what? I am wrong for this. I wronged this person, or I did something, or I'm wrong about whatever. And then it moves you into moving out of that unhealthy, toxic shame.
It should. And the real gas there in the engine, in my opinion, is that we recognize that we are needy. Because if you don't recognize that you're needy, then your ego is going to run the show. And the more you do that, and the more you stretch that, the thinner that ego shell becomes, because you're just stretching it in places that it doesn't belong. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and thinner like a balloon. And any pressure up against that, whether that's healthy shame or toxic shame, is going to send you reeling in your relationships. And that's when we start talking about narcissistic personality traits, NPD, all that. So, hey, Darren.
What's up?
Go for it. Back to you.
We
were talking about the impairment and the giftedness of shame.
Did we get the audio fixed at all?
I think so. I think it's a lot better on my end. I can hear y'all a lot better without the interruption. I was just saying to April that when we, with that toxic shame, or when you feel shame, then I felt convicted about something, like, man, that was wrong. You're right. That person's right, or I shouldn't be doing that. And I feel convicted. Now, as a person of faith, I could say, well, that's the Holy Spirit, right? And speaking to me and convicting me, but that conviction should move me into working through that and asking for forgiveness, repentance, things like that, apologizing, saying I'm sorry, changing my behavior. But I associate conviction a lot of times with what you feel, what is a positive thing when you have shame.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a question real quick. How relevant, or maybe that's not the word, but our comfort zones and our own personal boundaries that we set, and acting or behaving outside of those, how does that correlate with shame and being maybe caught acting outside of our boundaries and our comfort zone, and we're ashamed because we're acting or behaving in a way or making choices that we normally wouldn't?
Well, okay, so let me set it up by finishing the thought before I started try to figure out the audio thing. So shame is what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to basically put you in your guardrails. Okay, shame is kind of
boundaries, like he was saying.
Yeah. It's kind of the bumpers in bowling, where you've got boundaries and bumpers that say, okay, look. So on one side, it pushes way further out than you think it is, and that side, the reason it's going out is because it's saying, no, you're capable of doing the same things anyone else in humanity, given the right circumstances. You are capable of doing anything. You're capable of murder. You're capable, you name it, the activity. Your infidelity, you're capable of cheating, of lying, of stealing, right? Given the right circumstances, there's nothing in and of yourself that you aren't capable of. And because you can now see the side, kind of like the Darth Vader, the dark side of who you can be, it also makes it more easily understood and visible to see your actual giftedness. Now that set, it gets readjusted because in our own just kind of, self-focused, almost narcissistic way, right? We all overestimate our giftedness. Okay.
We don't all, some of us do.
D's
and I's.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, S's and C's will underestimate.
They'll underestimate. That's okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So for the D's and the C's, or the D's and the I's, right? We're going to kind of get reeled back in. That no, you can't do everything, and you can't do everything by yourself. You need other people. You need help.
They tend to be overestimators, and then the S's and the C's are underestimators. So they don't live to their potential because they're constantly, shame is
is
constantly at play,
doing the opposite on them. It's actually telling them you're not good enough. No, what you bring to the table is lacking, right?
There's an inner critic.
So that inner critic, so it's a self-adjusting thing where now all of a sudden I can see very clearly that, man, I'm capable of doing anything the rest of humanity is. And you know what? I can't do it all, but I can do some or a lot. Like I can now see my giftedness more clearly, and that tells me where I need to go and get help. Okay, so I'm not super strong in I'm not the guy that's going to sit and read all the details about stuff because I don't like reading and in the minutia. Well, I may need help in that. But I may be very gifted at doing something else that person who loves to get in the details is horrible at, right? So it sets those boundaries. So when you understand that, I think more clearly, I think that makes what Lyndon is saying. I think that makes that more visible because now you're going outside of what is not your giftedness, and your expectations can be set accordingly, if that makes sense. So I don't know that shame is healthy in that sense, Lyndon, because it sets our expectations, I think, and it says, I'm going to try this. I never played the guitar, but maybe I'm not even musical, but I'm going to try it. My expectations are now set, and I may need to go get some help. I may not just be able to pick this up and learn it on my own. I may need to go get a teacher.
Which is humility.
That's right.
It's humility, because that person who's built to think like that, and a lot of times those people will have some C going on, and the C in its fleshliness says you should be able to do this.
Yeah. Why? I mean,
what's wrong with you? Why can't you? And that's why a lot of times you'll see them be very limited in their scope, but they'll be very deep in the one thing that they know. They like to be the expert in this one
thing. They're not going
to. And the reason why is because the inner critic that plays is so strong in their minds. And so they just say, well, I don't want to feel the, shame or embarrassment or whatever it is of the people outside of me, but mostly of myself, to think that I failed at doing it. And so the work for the ego in those people is to say, who told you that that you're so good that you should be able to do that? That's so pompous.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
somebody,
and you work with those people to go, hang on a minute. You're no better than anybody else. On what planet should you just be able to pick up a guitar and play it? No one. So, come back down to earth and join reality where everybody is on the struggle bus. You know what I'm saying? It all goes back to the same thing. It's just, it just depends upon the subject and kind of how you're built.
Well, I remember reading, Wayne Gretzky said, what do you want to be remembered as a hockey player? You got to remember, guys, for you heathens who don't know much about ice hockey.
I don't.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know what to say about these people. But anyway, you got to realize, I mean, if you looked at the individual records in professional sports, I mean, one guy, football, basketball, baseball, you're never going to see one person dominating the record books like Wayne Gretzky did. And when he was asked him one time, what do you want to be remembered as? Wayne Gretzky said, I want to be remembered. I want people to know and remember how hard I worked to be able to do this. And I think people say, oh, he's called the Great One. So he's just naturally built. Well, of course he's naturally built, talented to do it. But Wayne Gretzky, he pushes back on that because he knows he worked his butt off to get that good and to stay that good. And the reason he continued to accelerate through his career was because he never stopped improving. He never got to the point where he wasn't humble enough to think, man, there's more I can learn. And the great ones, that's what they do. Here's a key thing, James, that I think we all need to remember, okay? So that we get shame correctly. Shame will humble you. Okay. So if you're feeling humbled, then you're good. Okay. But shame never humiliates you. So if you're feeling humiliated, and you can look up those words if you're not really sure what they mean, but I think we all know when we feel humiliated, then the shame has turned toxic, because it should lead you to humbleness. That should lead you to being broken. And that gets you to a place where I'd say two things. Number one, you can appreciate who God is better and what he's done for you. And you now are in a prime position where you can live more comfortably inside of your giftedness and your limitations. You stay in your lane, and you are much better at living authentically, and it will produce empathy for others. Because if I realize, James, that I'm capable of doing anything and everything everybody else is, and you come to me, James, with something that you have thought, done, whatever, I'm not going to meet you with judgment. I'm going to meet you with empathy, because, man, it could have been me. I mean, there's nothing better about me than James, and James, you're no better than, the guy across the street, and, so on and so forth. Right. So it should produce those things in you. And when it doesn't, when all of a sudden it is, you're not going to brokenness. The other piece I missed out, I would throw in there,
self-awareness.
is self-awareness.
So
yeah.
we did a fill in the blank on our promo, and we put some blanks. We said shame leads to blank, which leads to blank, which leads to blank. And so to fill in the blanks, it would be shame leads to brokenness, which leads to self-awareness, which then leads to humility. And in all of that, you should begin to see empathy in someone. Someone that is void of empathy is probably dealing with toxic shame. Somebody that has empathy probably is more likely to be experiencing a healthy shame, or have experienced healthy shame. Is that correct? Because I got all this from you, Darren. So I mean, did I? I'm not being sarcastic. I'm a good note taker.
And you can see how narcissism ties to this, right? Because if you go, well, I don't like to feel humble. Really what you're saying is that I'm a superhuman. Somebody told me, probably my parents or somebody told me that I was pretty dang good. And nobody ever really spent time humbling me and teaching me to be humble and teaching me to have empathy. Everyone had empathy for me. I never had to exert any empathy, because everyone always did it on my behalf. And there's a lot of reasons, right? Because we said narcissists are made, not born. But if you look at it, and then the narcissist is unable to feel empathy. Well, why is that? Because, they lack self-awareness. Go through the whole thing. They lack self-awareness. They are hiding their brokenness. And then what's the third one?
Well, they shut down. They shut down feelings.
Yeah, all the emotions are shut down.
Yeah,
usually anger is one that's.
Well, let's say your experiences as a child, because as we've talked about, Darren, and you've made this point over and over, and it's a great point, and that is most of us as adults are carrying things from our childhood, from our life experiences. Maybe not just childhood, but I mean, even your teenage years.
Yeah.
We carry these things into our adult relationships, into our marriages. And so if let's say you have a child who has low self-esteem, who's been, for whatever reason, they feel less than because of the way they were raised, or the like circumstances, or all of these things.
Yep.
I have seen where that can be hard for them to feel or to experience healthy shame, because they get all icky and sticky and feeling, they're like, I already feel bad enough about who I am. I already don't like me. Now you're heaping all this shame on me. And then it comes out, it's ugly the way they deal with it. And they can't realize that they're broken, which can lead to the self-awareness, can reach to humility, because it's okay to be broken. It's okay to have experienced that. And we're not expecting you, this kid we're talking about, to be super perfect at everything, because nobody is, but they can't stand sitting in that feeling less than.
Yeah, nobody can.
Yeah.
That's because of the fall. Thanks a lot.
They're never able to experience how to deal with shame.
Yeah, well, nobody is. That's why the Bible says you should train up a child in the way that they should go.
Right.
And if you look at my twins, Darren and I, they're different personalities for sure. I got some D and some I in one. I got some S in another, and who knows, because they're not done cooking. But we deal with them very differently in what shame and all that kind of stuff feels like, and how it all plays out, and what we exercise in each of them, because it's totally different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way with two boys. They're not twins, but I've got my oldest. If I'm hard on him, he may cave in but then how he deals with that is anger, because he gets angry about that because of the way that made him feel. Then my youngest one, he's just agreeable. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. And then he just feels bad, and he just wants to make everybody like him and make it feel good.
Well, and that's why I think it's important, James, of everything you just described. What do you do? I mean, what is most important, and the reason we have shame is because we all need, as humans, to understand our limitations and our boundaries. Okay. And because of the fall, what we're going to do is by default, we are going to, we're going to assume that we're better than everyone else in every way. And I'm better at the good things, and I'm not going to do the bad things, whatever and however those get defined.
Well, can I also add that you become very contemptuous, which you had noted before, where it's not just that I'm better than everybody else, but I'm going to go around pointing out everybody else's faults and problems, and I'm going to tell you all the ways that you failed, and the reason that we're in this pickle is because of you and you and you and you and you and you. And if you had done these right, and there's a lot of contempt that goes with toxic.
Yeah, there's two ways to win a horse race. I can have the fastest horse, or I can try to trip every horse on the track with me, and that's what ends up happening. The contempt comes. And now I can't measure up, but what I can do is bring everyone else down. And man, I have met and worked with people in a business scenario. One person that's coming to mind right now that will remain nameless, but this person was convinced that the only way they could get ahead is to pull everyone around them down, and that was the MO for this person. And it was because they couldn't face the fact of who they really were. And that's what shame is supposed to do. I wrote this down. We read it in class, but I wrote brokenness, which is where shame should be driving you, leads you to self-awareness. Okay. And the self-awareness is the struggle to identify, expose, and express who we really are, even when that discovery hurts or points to a need for change. Okay. So I want to slow down there for 5 seconds. Quick time check. When we hear someone say, oh, that person isn't very self-aware or whatever, we talk about our own self-awareness. I mean, I want you to stop and think what it takes to actually gain self-awareness. It is a pursuit. It is a struggle to identify, expose, and then express who we are, even when that discovery gets hurt, that discovery hurts or points to a need for change. So can you guys see along that little chain where most people tap out?
Yeah, chain.
I mean,
yes.
I mean, to become self-aware, I've got to expose who I am. I've got to wrestle to figure it out. I've got to look at stuff that I don't want to look at and it hurts. And then you're going to start pointing out crap that I need to change on.
Yeah. Who's you though?
Yeah,
Who are you
I just
to?
rather be king, man. I just rather say
sure.
I'm better than everybody else. And I'll just find out. Here's what I'll do. I'll just get my life situated. Say I only deal with people who don't challenge me there, and then I'll just make life work.
Well, and if you're a non-believer, you could probably skate on that for a while.
People do it all the time. Even you ready? Even believers do that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Then there are people who call themselves believers who are really what the Bible calls revilers. You go look that up. It's in Corinthians. Who who can skate on it for a really long time.
Oh.
And then there are people, I think, the rest of us who are believers who have the Holy Spirit, who is the great counselor, who's going, really? What do you think about that? And we can quench the Holy Spirit, which means we throw a big old water bucket on that and go, yeah, I'm not really there to listen to that. And right. And we've all done that in our lives and probably still do to some extent. I think maturity in Christ comes when you wrestle with that a lot less. That argument becomes smaller and smaller and smaller over time. And you realize that you are needy, and the humility and the pressing against the thinness of that ego, you've let some of that tension go, and it doesn't bring so much pain anymore. You're like, yeah, I am needy. No, I shouldn't be able to do all of that. No one has that expectation for me. Not God, not the people. I don't know. I guess I'm the only one, right? And you start getting stronger in that. And I think that's where the growth is.
Well, but it's a lie of our culture. James, you were there. When I asked our class, remember, I said, hey, how many of you guys would describe yourself as needy? Raise your hand. Remember that?
No one.
No one raised their hand. No one said, yeah, I'm needy. The truth is, every person in that room and every person in that building and every person outside of that building is needy. But our culture says, well, what do we say? Oh, geez, man, you don't want to date that chick. Why? She's so needy.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, oh my gosh, you don't want high maintenance, man. That's a Kardashian, and she just doesn't have the last name. But trust me, it's a Kardashian, right? That's what we do. Now, think about that. You take that kind of mentality into the relationship. You take that mentality out into the business world.
Or if you look at it from the other perspective, is I don't need a man. I ain't needy. INDEPENDENT.
That's right.
I got this. I shouldn't need anybody
because that's weakness. I got my own money.
I got my own bank account. I buy my own.
Well, and when you say I don't need anybody, I shouldn't need anybody, you don't want to feel vulnerable, because when you feel like you're dependent on someone or needy of someone, now all of a sudden you feel vulnerable. Real quick, let me add this in before we wrap up the show. I meant to get to these guys earlier. Speaking of shame and need, I'll wrap this together. If you're in need of a realtor, Jeff Jacobs is your guy over at Realty Town. They have no shame in their game over there. See, you like how
I love it.
in there. You like that, right? Now, I've known Jeff for over 15 years now, about 15 years. And they've got 125 years total team experience. Jeff is a great leader over there, but he has got some great people on his team that make him make his job very rewarding, as he's told me many times. They specialize in residential real estate, helping buyers and sellers with their home needs, but they can also help you with your commercial needs as well. Backed by an exceptional support team of professionals, they are absolutely dedicated to stellar service and making your happy place happen. Contact Jeff Jacobs at 972-978-6539 if you are in need of any real estate needs. And if you're interested in becoming a realtor, he would be happy to visit with you. Those are our friends over there at Realty Town. Yeah. So,
and James, let me jump in with one more thing. So when this thing goes toxic, all right, here's what happens.
And real quick, tell us so as a teaser for next week's show, tell us what we're going to get into next week. I'd like to get into how we see toxic shame and contempt impacting marriages or relationships in a real tangible way. So go ahead.
And I think we can tie it to DISC too, because I think it comes out in 4 big different ways.
Yes,
it does. And
it doesn't look the same, I think.
So here's the teaser. We'll dive into this more next week. Okay. But so let's think about this. So shame is supposed to make you understand more clearly who you are. Okay. So when you go through brokenness, you become self-aware. You begin to answer questions like, who am I? Well, what do I believe? What do I value? Why am I doing what I'm doing? You can answer those questions. When you got someone who's not self-aware, they can't answer those questions, or they answer it with, "Well, I'm a VP at whatever. I own my own company that does this or does that.
I am what I do."
Yeah, I am. It's more what you do. Okay. So when you think healthy shame is supposed to put you in your lane. It's supposed to help you identify who you are as a person. It's supposed to help you understand self. Okay. When this thing goes toxic, when you, in other words, it's supposed to humble you. It's supposed to break you. It's supposed to make you more usable and more user-friendly, so to speak. But when you deny the giftedness, when you say, I ain't going to get broken, I'm not going to become self-aware.
It's the woman you gave me. It's the serpent.
Yeah. Then here's what happens. Now, all of a sudden, you are actually rejecting who you really are.
And who we really are, first and foremost, has to start with, and I know this is not a popular word in our culture, but I'm telling you, it matters. First, you have to understand you're a sinner.
Yes, sir.
And until you can understand that and embrace that in the way that God wants you to embrace that, then you're not going to get to first base.
Well, okay, right. Then if I am, then James, how do I, first of all, is that bad? If it is bad, how bad is it? What can I do to change that? And we all know the answer if you've been around a good church ever, right? The answer is no. Those are all things pointing to your need. But when this goes to toxic shame,
and just put a pause on it, because this is where Brene Brown, and she's awesome, and I love everything she says, and it's all good. But this is where it breaks down, because she can't take you to this place where. So what'd you do? Who told you were naked? Why are you hiding in the bushes? Oh, guess what? I'm gonna make you leather covering from a sacrifice. But leather is skin of an animal. So there is a sacrifice to cover your need. And see, that's where Brene Brown breaks down. She'll take Genesis all the way out to that point, right? She'll talk about that shame and guilt and our need and all the things we're talking about, but
that's
won't
why
get to the
that's why she's on TED Talks and not in a church.
We're not.
It's not in a church. Okay, but I know we've got a couple of minutes, but let me finish the tease out here. Okay. So when this thing goes toxic, what you're really doing is you're rejecting who you are. It's actually self-rejection. Okay. So what happens is now the culture and your flesh and you and your screwed up brain starts to redefine, because you feel like you're getting pushed more to humility, and the culture, the world, or thinking says, no, don't go there, because that's not humility, that's humiliation. And you don't want any part of that. Okay. What now we say is, okay, you can't, this is indicating that you're capable of failure, and failure is useless. Is that true? No. Who wasn't it Michael Jordan says, I succeeded because I failed many, many times, or whatever it was, right? Okay. And then the last thing is it says is that if you have an ability, well, that's worthless. Okay. So everything that brokenness, that self-awareness is going to bring to the surface and identify the culture and everything else around it says, nah, that's worthless. That's useless. That's no good. That's bad to have, yada, yada, yada. And next thing you know, we're running from the very things that can give us life. Next week.
Darren, great word. April, thanks for you guys being with us today, bringing some great content. Look forward to seeing everybody next week as we dig even deeper into shame and get going there with what Darren just teased us with. Everybody have a great week, and we appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, Lyndon.
Bye, Lyndon.